A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today we have Laura Nelson, co-founder of Sober Life Rocks and the author of The Inclusive Event Planner, a leader in promoting sober inclusive spaces in the event industry. With over 20 years of experience in business and event planning, she helps organizations create environments that foster connection beyond the bar. Her passion comes from her own sobriety journey and belief in intentional, inclusive event design. Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on the podcast and sharing more of your work. I think it's super important, especially in the event space where there is this glamorizing of things when it comes to partying and having a good time. How did you realize that it's so important to normalize making sober choices when it comes to event design?
Sure, yeah. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I actually, in my day job, I'm a speaker in the dental industry. So I've been to more conferences than I can count. And I, did that for 15 years. And then in 2020, stopped drinking. And then the world shut down for a few, months or years, depending on where you lived. But then when I got back to traveling again to conferences, but now sober, it opened up my eyes to how non-inclusive the event space can be, whether it's a conference of 50 people or 5,000 people, when it comes to the evening events and the alcohol and the bars. And so that's really what kind of motivated my interest in this.
That's amazing. And I think it's so interesting how there does seem to be a shift with younger adults in America. Why do you think that is? Because it is super inspiring. Like our podcast is spiritually based, and many people are going through their journey of evolution, recovery, healing, and oftentimes they do make the choice, whether it feels like thrust upon them to shift behaviors, or sometimes it is like a calm choice to be like, oh, this no longer resonates.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of things all aligning at once. I think that there is, for the longest time, people weren't sharing their stories the way we are now. And I think there's a lot of people who are suffering in silence, and there's a lot of people who are sober in silence for whatever reason, not even recovery, but just they choose not to drink. It doesn't serve them. They never drink a lot. Maybe it's religion, maybe it's health and wellness and all of that, right? I think mental health is a huge discussion right now, and alcohol does not serve mental health issues. And so I think there's a lot of things aligning right at this moment. And then when it comes to the event spaces, we can get content and learn online. We can listen to your podcast. We can go to YouTube and get anything we need now everywhere. So if we're going to get in a plane or drive to an event and network with people and hang out with people, we're there for the connection. And so I think that there's a lot of, well, if I'm going to connect, if I'm missing the connection because I'm forgetting some of my evening or things are getting sloppy or I wake up in the morning and I feel bad, why am I spending the time away from my family and friends to go to this event? So I think it's just like a whole bunch of things that are kind of all coming together at the same time.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at balletartsmovement@gmail.com. First class free. TeloVital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with Zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for TeloVital. Link in the description of the podcast. It's kind of like bringing back your self-awareness and to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And this does bring a lot of clarity to people. I think it's so beneficial because it brings them into the center of the focus in terms of what they're putting in their body even. And sometimes that can be
Right.
so easily, it's a distraction. Like drinking is one of the main distractions and addictions, and it's hard for people sometimes to maintain or manage addictions.
It's just that this is a spotlight to help those who are choosing not to drink to have better options, and to help those who are maybe on the fence to know that there are other people who don't drink alcohol too, and you're not alone. Because sometimes it can be a very lonely place when you are going inside and trying to determine your relationship with alcohol, and when you know that there's other people in the same space. Because a lot of times at these events, there's the pressure, and we a lot of times don't get to choose when we go to these events, because it's a work focused event. It's something that we have to go to. So just like at nights and weekends, we can choose who we hang out with at home, but at work sometimes it's a little bit more pressure. So for those listening, it's not just about not drinking, it's just about including those and not putting pressure on people to drink. It's their choice. If they want to have alcohol, great. If they don't, that's okay too.
100%. What are your
Mhm.
favorite alternatives to alcohol in these kinds of events?
Well, so in my book, and that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, because so many people thought it was just about the mocktails or the drinks and stuff, which I have chapters in there about that. But really, it's about the entire space. And it really starts from like the minute people are invited to it, that they know it's a safe space, that there's going to be options from when they get there to make the environment one that's easy for people to connect and network. Because a lot of times it's not easy for someone to walk up to a bunch of strangers and just be like, hi, I'm Laura, And so, how can we make the event more inclusive and easy for people to connect? Can we do events that aren't just 5 o'clock at the bar? Can we do things over coffee or at lunch? Can we have other planning things? Like, what's the focus of the event? Is it standing around a bar and drinking, or is it a comedian? Is it a DJ? Is it games? Is it, all different things that you can do for the event. So it's a lot of that. And then it's also about having better options for people, because a lot of times when we go to events like this, it's yeah, what do you have without alcohol? Coffee, tea, and soda. And if people are trying to work on health and wellness, that's not necessarily always the best option. So what could we do to offer them something that's comparable as what people are drinking with the alcohol, but without alcohol? And so it's kind of a whole mix of things, which is what I couldn't answer in one question. I had to write a book about it.
I love that. That's so helpful. And this kind of
Uh-huh.
reminds me of the dating world. And where so often some people just are inviting people, let's get a drink. And that could even be offensive to some people who are, like you
Right.
mentioned, they're on their journey of holistic wellness. And what it is interesting how, not to get offended, you can just literally say, I'm not into that now. Why don't we go for coffee or something else? But yeah, it is
Exactly.
so interesting how the glamorizing of drinking, or just
Mhm.
that's just been the vibe for so long that people continue
Mhm.
until they realize, like, oh, this doesn't align with me right now, and it's okay to change your choices and to realign to a different form of drinking,
Yeah.
coffee or tea or something.
Yeah. And I think you're right. And that's one of the big things is we've just grown up with alcohol being like this elixir. When we get older, we'll have access to it. And if you see the billboards and you go to sports games, it's everywhere. You're going to be famous and rich if you drink this tequila. And then we by habit say, let's go get a drink. And we just assume it means drinking alcohol. And then we go to events and alcohol is there. And so it has just become so much of our societal norms that to go against it is, that's a thing, where a spiritual thing, where you kind of go inside, a growth thing, and say, you know what, I'm going to go against the norm. And one of the things that we really believe at Sober Life Rocks is we want to honor people who are making those choices. Not that you have to, but like when you do, you should be celebrated. One of the biggest things that I've overcome in my life was drinking alcohol. I'm going against societal norm. I'm very proud of it. And, I want to share it so that anybody else who's in that space, feels connected and also celebrated.
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the number one purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniels' online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast. That's very inspiring, and it does take a level of bravery and courageousness to see that within ourselves and to also be willing to voice that externally, knowing the ramifications could be either, side eye, rejection. There could be all these different
Right.
societal things that could occur as well.
Uh-huh, for sure. Especially with work. If you're worried about your career, if your job is, wine dining customers, a lot of networking happens at the bar. So that's even one step more. It's not even going against your, family and friends, but it could be an employment thing.
What do you suggest for people who do feel like that's their work and they do want to kind of stay true to their beliefs, but there is that kind of like peer pressure?
Yeah, I mean, my goal here isn't to get people sober, but what I would say is there's a ton of communities, lots of research now, lots of education, all the way from AA, who's been around forever, until now, just different programs that you can do. And you don't have to choose to stop drinking. I mean, that's a personal decision. But if you are looking to assess your relationship with alcohol or trying to cut back or find things, then it's a matter of like, learning and getting connected to help you with that, because it's awkward at first to be like, no, I don't drink, and somebody's asking you why and whatever. So there's lots of tips and tricks that you can learn to say or do depending on your comfort level. And then it's literally helping us. I mean, one of the things we're doing is we're just trying to spotlight that there's more and more people not drinking. And when the meeting planners and the conferences and the HR, business owners can see, like, I need to include options in all of my events that don't just focus on alcohol, it's to help those that maybe aren't as strong at standing up saying, I don't want to drink, right? I just want to have better options. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the community aspect is very helpful as well because it always helps when there are people around you can either lean on or get advice from or just talk to one another for sure.
Yeah, and listening to like this podcast, this is great, to be able to hear ideas and suggestions and see that there are other people who feel, similar the way that you do. And that's really with Sober Life Rocks, we're actually having a conference in January, and it's focused on amplifying sober voices, because so many people end up in the sober space because of their own personal choices, but now they're kind of a leader, whether they're a leader of their group of friends or they're a leader on stage or a podcaster or whatever. And we want to help to amplify that, because the more people are talking about it, just the more feel like there's a connection for them.
100%. That's so true. And I know within our community who listen to the podcast, a lot of people are on the spiritual path and
Mm-hmm.
they have also kind of gone through the journey of
Right.
recovery and dealing with making better choices for their health and for their well-being. And a shift does happen when they take those action steps to
Yep.
switch alcohol out. They begin to see it clear, think clear, feel clear. So there are a lot of benefits to making that choice, whether it is
Mm-hmm.
for work purposes, also for wellness purposes, and for the spiritual aspect that everybody desires to reach a certain level of spiritual clarity. I think that also has a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, one of the biggest things I've seen a lot of these conferences is they're having wellness, panels and wellness talk, and that's amazing. I think that's awesome, right? The thing for me though is if we're going to talk about breath work and spiritual gain, spirituality, if we're going to talk about yoga, if we're going to, we also should be talking about our relationship with alcohol, because you could do all those things, and then if you go home and numb the pain or do something with a bottle of wine, then your wellness journey is being hindered. And so that's where I love that this discussion is kind of starting to tie with wellness, because it is a whole picture, right? And only you know what's going on inside of here and here. So
Yes, that's so true about the numbing. People normally drink to stay numb, and I think when the realization of like, oh, okay, this numbness is not leading me towards any connection, it's even leading to more disconnection. I think that makes a huge wake up. It's like a wake up call to be like, oh, it's not helping me, this is not making me feel better, or if it is, it's just for 1 second and then I feel even more numb, which
mhm,
can lead to depression and all these symptoms. So yeah, it's
mhm.
great that the realization is coming and also the steps are taken as well.
Yeah, and the first step really for anyone on this journey is to just first start to become aware. You know, like what are you drinking? When are you drinking? Why are you drinking? Are you only drinking at events that you feel peer pressured at work, or are you drinking because you're numbing things, or what are the reasons? And not necessarily that you have to quit, because that was one of the things for me, as the idea of being sober kept me away from sobriety longer than it really should have, because I didn't think I could do life without alcohol. Like, it didn't seem fun. Like, I was like, how am I gonna go to a concert? How am I gonna travel? You know?
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast.
So just first realizing, like, this is a journey. This isn't a you have to stop. Not everybody has to stop. Not every It's your decision, but really being aware first of why. Why are you drinking? And understanding that alcohol is an addictive substance, and so you drink it long enough, you're going to get addicted. And so just being conscious of it and starting to really kind of do an assessment. And then for me, once I made the decision to stop drinking, that's really when my real journey started towards, growth and learning about me, because then you have to learn how to do you without the substance. How do I go to events? How do I have an awkward conversation? How do I go through grief without having this substance that numbs it?
That's so true. That's the journey of authenticity. And
Mm-hmm.
it can be very raw or feel very raw, especially when you're personally choosing to, in a way, separate yourself from the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be
Yeah.
very interesting to go through that journey for sure, because we always feel super vulnerable. And I think that's fine. That's beautiful. And also, just a reminder that it's part of the journey of growing. And, it's being a
Mm-hmm.
responsible adult. All the younger kids are like, I want to be an adult. I want to be an adult. Well, that's the first step to being a responsible adult, is to make those choices, to understand your patterns, and are they leading you towards balance and something that inspires your growth, or is it more addictive? And I think we all may have addictive personalities, but we have
Right.
to kind of be aware of where we're giving our energy and how our patterns are like shaping our reality.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's a really good point that you bring up with addictive personalities. And one of the things that I like to talk about is that everybody has something they're dealing with. And if you're not dealing with it, you will be. Like, it's coming, right? So as humans, and as we are giving each other grace to realize that my issue might have been with alcohol, and maybe yours is not, but maybe yours is with something else, right? There's so many addictions out there, social media and gambling and eating and all of that, and we all have our own things. And so by giving each other the grace to realize that, your thing may not might be my thing, but that doesn't mean my thing's yours is any better or mine's worse, right? Like, and I love this podcast and talking about it, because I feel like there's so many people who don't realize, they think they're all alone. They think they're the only one. And it's like, no, somebody else has gone through or is going through what you're going through.
For sure. And in a space where it's not about judgment, I think that helps also because there's so much judgment around the choices you make, or do you have to make just this choice? Like, it's all or nothing. Like you mentioned, you can do it on your own pace. You can do it according to how you feel safe and comfortable. And
Yeah.
there's also a level of, it has to be like judgment free zone where you're able to process things and choices without somebody criticizing your every move according to their own
Right.
expectations. So everyone has their own expectations and journey. And it's also hard when it's a sensitive topic and there's so many projections from different people based on their own wounds. Everybody has their own wounds, and it's so easy to project.
Right. Yep. And the other thing too is with alcohol specifically, there was used to be the idea that you were an alcoholic or you weren't. You were addicted or you weren't. Like it was one or the other. And now there's so much research to show it's a spectrum, alcohol use disorder. And so, alcohol serves a purpose for some people. And in the beginning, potentially it helps with whatever the situation. But the issue is now we know it's a spectrum, and if you've ever drank too much, woke up hungover, regretted drinking, drank for the wrong reason, you're on the spectrum. It's just where are you? And then the question is, when does the addiction kick in? And that's where, humans and who knows, and right. So the judging around alcohol is it used to be like the person is bad, that person has an alcoholic. Well, it's no longer that, because it's not the person. The person has they're going through, dealing with this addiction, but it's about the substance. The substance is addictive. And I just was listening to another podcast recently, and they were talking about, like, we know so much about this now, like social media, when we scroll, right? It becomes a habit because we want instant reward. We want a hand, and it's just immediate. Well, the same with alcohol, right? We drink, and so it's not the person that's bad. It's an addictive thing, right? And so anybody who drinks it long enough can get addicted to it. There's no question. That's
For
what it's
sure,
at. So
yes.
yeah. So it
Yeah.
really kind of has to go, I'm not bad. Like, this is not my problem. Yes, you have to work through it. Yes, you've become addicted or you're somewhere on the spectrum, but you're not the only one, right? And that's just another journey to go on.
Yes, 100%. The journey is also including forgiving yourself and then kind of reaffirming yourself with grace. It's
Mhm.
so true. It's a whole journey because we're not perfect, and when we claim to be, then we have to deal with the retribution of that all. So yeah, it's the whole realization process of acknowledging and then
Uh-huh.
realizing if it is a crutch. We all have our crutches. We have to find ways to cope with things. Hopefully we
Mhm.
do have a community of friends that kind of help us to manage our stress, manage the things that we go through, emotional things, mental things. And yeah, it's for sure, like you mentioned, the journey. It's to be
Mhm.
more aware of our choices
Mhm.
and to lead healthier lives. And that's based on our patterns, our day-to-day patterns. So it does take a certain level of wanting to to
Uh-huh.
start that. I think that's the hardest step too, because when we are in cycles or patterns that are not very healthy, but they are in a way manageable because it's getting us through the day and it's continuing for us. So to stop that kind of like circulation, it takes so much resistance almost. It feels like you're resisting your natural flow when you've been in this
Sure.
kind of space. Even though it does seem like a sense of stagnation, at the time being, it's helping that percent the aggression within you that's unhealed or some kind of anger it's not processed. It's like it's helping during that time, right? But it's like once you
Mhm.
realize, okay, this is making me more angry, or maybe now I can't sleep, or now I can't have like a healthy conversation with somebody because I'm always like fidgeting, waiting for the drink or something.
Right, exactly. And that's where, I mean, all of the research that's coming out and the things we're learning about, like our subconscious and the way our brain operates, I mean, that is just your brain, your subconscious saying, that we don't want to change, do it the same way. It worked yesterday. I don't want to do something different. It's way harder to do something different than it is to just grab that glass of wine or skip going to the gym or whatever. And we know now, like we used to think you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks, but now we know that you can. It's not necessarily going to be an easy road, but on the other side of it can be well worth it.
Exactly. Yes, that is so true. And
Mhm.
you're the author of the Inclusive Event Planner, which we've been talking about. That's so cool. What do you think is one thing from there that people will take away that's going to help them kind of go through events and just deal with all these work meetings and things and not feel super left out?
Yeah, so the biggest thing about the Inclusive Event Planner is it's a free download. So if anybody wants to go check it out,
Oh,
it's on our
amazing.
website. Yeah, so you can buy the hard copy, but it's a free download. And the reason is because it's focused on the event planner. Anybody can read it so that you can guide you through events, but really it's focused on the event planner because most of the event planners don't know that there's a large segment of, now it's becoming more newsworthy, but didn't know that there's a large segment of people who don't drink because most of the time we were quiet about it or we just put a lime in our drink and carried something around and there was no real spotlight on it. And so the reason I made it as a free download is so anybody can send it to anybody and say, hey, I went to your conference and here's a book that might help to guide the event planners. Because I think of it a lot like when you used to go to events, if you were vegetarian or vegan, you had to go to a special table in the back to pick up your food. Like it was, you knew that was the table. Now they serve right there with everyone else at events. So it's similar with alcohol. I mean, right now we're not there, but I see it being it's not a special kids table with a sticky sweet mocktail and a kids cup. I need to be served adult beverages with everyone else, just mine doesn't have alcohol. And so that's really where I see it going, and we'll get there. But it's a long haul because just we've been doing it this way for so long. And we have to, deal with the meeting planners, and then wherever they're hosting the meeting, the conventions or the hotels have to get up to speed. And then we have Big Alcohol, who's got big contracts with these hotels, and so it's just kind of it's just starting movement. But really, that's what the inclusive event planner is for to kind of help spotlight that.
That's amazing and so kind of you for sharing this to the public. And I think it is true. It's kind of like changing a blueprint that for so
Mhm.
long that's been the thing. That's been
Yeah.
the way it has been. So yes, of course, it is going to be so challenging to rearrange this all. But such great work you're doing, Laura. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on the
you.
podcast and sharing your inspiration and your work with us and for also promoting sober inclusive spaces. It's amazing. And where can people connect with you and see all of your content?
Yep. So everything is at Sober Life Rocks. So you can just go to our website, Sober Life Rocks. We have a conference coming up in January. My book is there on the download. You can see we have a LinkedIn group on LinkedIn, so you can join from there. So everything is all there at Sober Life Rocks.